All right, so the next topic is going to be the TCP/IP, and there may be a few of you that are familiar with this, but we're just going to do a little deep dive real quick and get into it. So, um, Al Gore is credited with creating the internet back in 1990, and I know that at least he said that he did back in that time. But really, this is the internet, right? This is the way of the internet. This is the way that we um, do usual communications. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the transmission control protocol as well as the internet protocol here in this little segment. So the most important thing that we're going to talk about here is this thing called the TCP three-way handshake. So TCP is connection oriented. You will absolutely see a question on the exam about this, not only being a connection oriented protocol, but a three-way handshake you will see specifically. A host in this particular sense is a client, and the host A here would originate the connection. The client sends the segment or message to a server in the form of a SYN command. So it's a synchronize. Host B would then say, hey, fella, I hear you, and I acknowledge you. So it's going to say, hey, I got the SYN. I'm going to send my own SYN back, synchronize, and I'm going to acknowledge you. And specifically, this particular would end um, the client and communication between the client and server by the the final, which is an acknowledgement. And if you bring up Wireshark and you were sniffing the traffic, you could see this specifically, where it comes up with a SYN, comes back with a SYNAC, and immediately we can get into some pretty cool stuff looking at what is happening behind the scenes. Uh, Really, when we talk about the easiest paradigm that we get into would be a web browser and a web server to talk about TCP. And that really, it just looks at the higher level here, whereas the IP actually will manage the message and the way that it happens for a web request. So specifically, any web request that's out there uses the TCP connection to process any established connection between a client and a server. Once that happens, the two systems communicate with each other. The system uses TCP port 80 to do the web traffic. Same thing occurs when we're doing like email or anything along those lines. Once it happens, TCP negotiates what ports is going to go over. For email, something like POP3 would be port 110. And so a lot of times that is why that's so important, because not only is it important where we're going to communicate over, what port we're going to communicate over, but hey, where and who am I looking to communicate with via an IP address? Again, this is super important to know because you're going to see at least 2 or 3 questions on TCP on the exam, specifically for connection-oriented protocols. And it also will get into that TCP three-way handshake. So make sure that you know this whenever we start to talk about that, and you'll see